Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. I know Nicki Jhabvala from the Washington Post. She's a subscriber. I know that. You can catch me on YouTube and catch us on YouTube, Empire Media. We are talking about Washington's 12-7 scintillating win over the Chicago Bears, but any win for this team right now is a good win. We're going to get to that in a minute. A couple of things. I'm not going to ignore the ESPN report. I, of course, work for ESPN. You can read my work on ESPN.com. I will have Seth Wickersham on, maybe one of the other investigative reporters who worked on that story. Not ignore it, going to talk about it. But tonight we're going to talk about the Commanders' 12-7 win. And so I'm here with Nicki Jhabvala. Nicki, there's a lot to unpack here.
You think?
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know where to begin on this one. Yeah. You have Ron Rivera walking off after the press conference. You have a win for the first time on. Where do you start here?
Yeah, I think we start at 6 a.m. Thursday morning when the ESPN report comes out, which also happened to be when NFL.com fully reported Carson Wentz's strained bicep tendon injury. What else do we have to say? William Jackson, now the center of trade discussions, apparently. Brian Robinson starting at running back while Antonio Gibson takes his first kickoff return. And oh, by the way, they actually really truly have to win this game to stop their losing streak, and they do, but just barely. It was so awful, but they won.
But they won, and I guess we can go a little bit on some of the stuff on like William Jackson. Mm-hmm. He has not requested a trade. He has not demanded a trade, right. But there's no doubt he'd welcome one, right. Because it doesn't fit here. Right. And I think they'd probably welcome it too, don't you think?
Right. No, and it's tricky because this is the guy that you made your highest paid free agent only a year ago. And now both sides are basically claiming that it's bust, it's a failed relationship. So there's a lot of money at stake. I mean, the team is going to end up eating a good chunk of change in dead money, which ultimately goes against the cap. Whether they release him or trade him, and, of course, with a trade, you always look at the second half of it. Is there a market for him? He didn't fit in this scheme, which is more zone. A lot of NFL defenses nowadays are zone to some degree. So where would he be a fit? And is there a market for him? Would a team be willing to give up assets to take on him and his contract?
Right. And it's probably a little on paper. Let's get back to the game because people want to hear about it. At least I'm sure they want to hear at least some of that.
Oh, yeah.
So again, where do you start here? Because you look at the defense. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Because they've given up big plays, but then 3 massive stops in the red zone.
Right. And they were among the few bright spots in this game. Really coming up big when it counted with those 3 red zone stops, 2 at the goal line. They also had 4 sacks. John Allen had an interception off a deflected pass from Efe Obada's helmet. They came up big. They've gotten home a lot too, that front line. I think they've been getting good pressure all season, but only in these last couple weeks have you seen them get home. But yeah, that was the bright spot. The rest was not so pretty.
No, it wasn't so pretty. And I think one of the things that I liked there at the end was Benjamin St-Juste making the big stop on that 4th down play. And what I liked about that play, and this is why I like St-Juste, because he really is a thinker out there.
Yeah.
And he's got the skill to match it. And one of the things they liked about him going inside in the slot was his footwork, his quick feet. I think you saw it on that last play that the way he attacked that ball is like a little zig route. Zig cuts in, cuts back out. If you're a taller corner, that can be a difficult route. His quick feet, and one of the things they said was the quick feet got him there. So he came up big. And I think, Montez Sweat came up big. Right. What have we seen? And they're going back to the sacks. I think part of that too goes back to coverage. I think they're giving him a chance to get home. Is this a game? Is this an effort they can build on? And if so, how much can they build on?
Yeah, I think on defense, certainly. I think you do see continued improvement on that side of the ball. I think it gets overshadowed a lot by the offense's deficiencies. But I think the improvement with the coordination and the rush and the coverage, certainly, I think making the switch at corner there has made a huge difference. I really like that Benjamin St-Juste, he struggled in the first half. He had at least 2 missed tackles, big missed tackles. And then he comes back, he's resilient.
Penalty.
Exactly. And he comes back and has the game-filling play. So I think that speaks volume as to what kind of player he is. So I think that's helped a lot. And yeah, I do think there's a lot to build on. On the offense, I'm not so sure still. I mean, there's still the same repeated mistakes. And, they basically won this game because the Bears had more mistakes than they did.
A fumbled punt basically is the game changer.
Yeah.
Going back to the last sequence too, I want to talk about Derek Forrest because he also is another young guy who makes a big stop in the end zone too. So a couple of young guys making some big plays, but you're right. I mean, that's, and it's hard with this one because Rivera was very animated when talking about this game in the post game, not just because they won, because he was really pissed because they almost blew it and he knew it, and there was so much the undisciplined play late. The Fields run to get down, and there goes my notebook. The Fields play to get down inside the 10-yard line, undisciplined play. But I guess it's a good thing for him to be that pissed after a win, knowing that it should have been better.
Yes. No, I think so, definitely. I don't think they should set so low a bar that they should just be happy with win. Now, guys are excited in the locker room, and as you pointed out earlier, like they should be. This is a big thing to get off their back, especially going into a longer week. They can rest and recover, and really find ways to clean it up. The questions, I'm not fully convinced they're going to be able to clean it up just because we keep seeing this crop up every single week. But yeah, I think Ron is right to be both happy and upset by this outing. It was an ugly showing. It was a bad game that worked out in their favor, and thankfully so. They needed that, but it was not a pretty game.
It was not about aesthetics.
Yeah,
it was not. But they even said it was ugly. They know it was ugly,
absolutely.
And you can't help but know it. But that's the thing. Like, we'll get to this in a minute about how much they can build up. But offensively, man, it is painful to watch this offense at times, and that's where my concern is that what is missing from this offense. We've seen it now this is 5 weeks in a row where the offense, I guess 4 weeks in a row where the offense really hasn't done anything. What is it that we're not seeing?
I just think it starts up front. I think that offensive line can't protect well, especially, this team loves to run 11 personnel, and when they go 3 wide, they cannot protect, and that's a real problem. And Carson is a lot of things. He's not mobile. So he's not able to extend plays with his legs like, Justin Fields can or other quarterbacks can. So you're limited in what you can do there to compensate. But yeah, I think it starts up front. Last year, the difference was that line. They played really well in spite of all the injuries. This year, they're not. They're giving up holes everywhere. And you see it in both the run and the pass game.
And I'm wondering how much you talk about the mobility, because that is an issue for me. It's an issue. I think it limits the offense because he can't create it all with his legs anymore. Right. He's not getting outside there and making plays with it. And I do think it holds it back to a degree. And so you need the protection, and they're not getting it. Even last year, their times protection broke down, but Heineke could get out of it. I'm not saying that you got to go start him, but it is something I think that's missing from this offense. And is it something that can be resolved, do you think? Not so much, he's not going to be more mobile, but can this be resolved?
If they can fix their play up front, I mean, they got to find some way. They're not going to make it throughout the season. Carson physically is not going to make it throughout the season with the hits he's taken. And they're just not going to go anywhere. I mean, it's a pretty inept offense right now. You just paid Terry McLaurin. You can never get him the ball. The only gains they're making are off PI calls anymore. And then the receivers at times are not helping Carson at all. The 2 drops by Curtis Samuel not helping. It was good to see Brian Robinson to get his first regular season touchdown. See him get more comfortable, and I think with more and more reps, he'll be able to break off those bigger runs. But yeah, I just think they need cleaner lanes. They need better protection up front until that comes.
And I think they have to be more consistent running the ball.
Right.
And it's funny because I said this last year too, like that's who they have to be. And it's who they have to be again this year. And I'm surprised to say that given the offensive skill talent, but it is.
Yeah.
And the problem is, I don't know, like John Bates didn't play, and I thought that hurt the run game. He's got the injury, but I thought that hurt it a little bit. But they did get it going in the second half. And part of the reason was Antonio Gibson.
Right.
Some of those outside runs off the left side, you can't, like, Robinson, I think, is going to be a nice steady runner, but Gibson still provides some sizzle for them.
Right. Oh yeah, he's got that speed. He's got that quick get off. Like he can add that juice when they need it. So when we talk about this whole notion of Brian Robinson starting, Antonio Gibson starting, I always throw it with a caveat. Like a lot of times it's going to be because of game plan. Sure. And I think their best run game is finding a way to use them both. And that's what Ron has said he's envisioned. Much like he had in Carolina. But yeah, if they can build off that, great. But there have been so many games where they just can't commit fully to the run game, either because they're behind or for some other reason, but they need to stick to it.
And can they build off this one? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know, like, we saw how it was. I mean, everybody saw that, but it's a win. And it's funny, as a baseball player, sometimes you get that blue hit and you break out of a slump. So I guess we really won't know until Green Bay, which is next up. But is this something that's like you, I think we're the same thing. You need to see more.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially just the way they won, it didn't instill much confidence that they can carry this over and clean it up and, just grow from here. I think mentally the win helps more than anything. Just that confidence boost, just to kind of improve morale in the locker room and kind of get over the slump. But they're going to be back in the same predicament if they don't truly fix things on the field and figure out what's going on.
How important was this? They're 1-5. Yeah. What do you think we're sitting here talking about right now?
Possible firings, and are they going to blow it up? Who could be gone tomorrow? I think all heck would break loose. Like,
I think that
try
was
not to curse.
I think that was all realistic scenarios too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when you get to that point and you lose the way they have, and you got everything else going on like this franchise does, anything is on the table. I don't think there's anything you could possibly rule out, because it's just been so bad for so long, and the way they started this season was just, it's been bad.
But it's funny because we're talking about the last 2 games, we're talking about a total of 3 yards that may have made a difference in their season. Last week, you get those 2 yards, you could be looking at 3-3 right now. This week, you stop that half yard, and it may have saved a couple jobs. And we don't know, but we know that we know how this thing works here. And so I think it was a realistic scenario for that to happen. Rivera, very animated in the press conference afterwards.
Yeah,
we haven't seen it like that before, have we?
No. The closest he's come is Dallas last year, when the team was there was an outbreak of the coronavirus, a couple tragedies within the team. That was the closest they've come. But yeah, he was very animated. And he's been incredibly defensive of Carson Wentz since they signed him, but never to this degree. Just a lot of curse words. Earmuffs for everybody.
I've been saying I'm using a lot more dash marks in my quotes lately from him. What did you make of all that?
I don't know. Like, in some ways, if you're a player, wouldn't you love to hear that? If your player, took your back like that, I think it's great. But I also I think it speaks to kind of the chaos of the franchise in general, where the head coach has to get up there and defend his stance and defend who made what move and when. And it's just that there are so many damning reports that come out. There are 5 different investigations that are open. It's just one thing after another. So the fact that he has to get up there and make that claim, and that's what's unfortunate.
I know for him it's exhausting.
Yeah,
because all you want to do, you come here to coach football, you want to just coach football. Listen, we're football reporters. We want to write about football, and a lot of times it's very difficult to do that covering this franchise. It also seems, one thing for people who wonder, like, are they still players like playing for him?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not, whatever anybody thinks, that's what we do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think if there's any frustration, it's over their circumstances, where they can't get things going. They all want to win. It's not that they're out there trying to lose. They all want to win, and it's frustrating as heck that they can't. And then they'll always kind of be in this cycle where, it's another bombshell story, or it's another investigation. I mean, that's hard to deal with. If you're working for a company and dealing with the same thing, it's difficult. And for guys who have been here throughout the entire tenure for Ron Rivera, guys like Terry, John Allen, that can be draining. So I think they do like playing for him. I think they respect him as a coach, as a man. I think there is definitely some frustration with their circumstances.
If their circumstances, I think if there's going to be frustration with the coach staff, it's other coaches on the staff, and not him. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So where does this go?
Yeah, this goes to a long weekend, a much needed rest before welcoming Aaron Rodgers, which that should be fun.
That should be fun. Nicki, thanks a lot for joining me. And thank you, as always, for tuning in. Like I said, I'll be back this weekend with Seth Wickersham from ESPN, maybe somebody else. And we're going to talk about the Snyder reports and fill you in on why, like the hows and the whys of the report, how they went about it, and then what does it mean for Dan Snyder, the future. You're going to want to tune in for that. So I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time.